Hi everyone, my name is Katie, and today my speech is titled The Evolution of Tap Dancing, the most original title I could possibly come up with. Today I'm just going to be talking about tap dancing and its history, and it has a really interesting origin story. I'm going to touch on that too. So if you're not familiar at all with tap dancing, which I would be really surprised if that was the case, tap dancing is that thing where they dance around, they make some noises, and have the metal things on their shoes. It's like, you know what it is. So there's two different kinds of tap dance. The first one is like Broadway, which is kind of what we think of now as like the jazzy, like whatever. And then there's just the kind that is, it just kind of is based off of a rhythm. It's more about musicality and not really about the specific dance moves. But I want to first start with talking about the origin, because the origin is really interesting. I did tap when I was younger, but I never learned this, or I did and I forgot. But tap dancing has its origins like dating back to like the time of slavery in like the United States. Basically, how it started was these slaves had learned how to communicate using drums, kind of like Morse code, but it wasn't the same thing, obviously. And so when their owners started to kind of catch on to what was going on, they got rid of all the drums, but you know, they're not stupid. They're like, we'll just use our feet. So that's how it kind of got started. And by the mid-19th century, it had kind of gone from being just, this is how we're going to secretly talk to each other, to like, this is a fun dance thing to do. And eventually they worked in elements of clogging and, Irish dance and British clogging, which clogging is basically the same thing as tap, but you know, you don't have, it's just a wooden shoe, which is what it was before, because before metal tap shoes were not around until like the 1920s. So before it was just what we would call soft shoe, which is just if I started dancing in like my shoes or my bare feet at 5, which is probably how they did those things, I would imagine, in that time. So tap became popular as like an entertainment form in the time of like minstrel shows, which is just kind of like a variety show, and then it transitioned to vaudeville, which came afterwards. And if you've ever like been into tap or watched tap, you've probably noticed that a lot of the routines are done in duets. And this is because, since it was predominantly African Americans doing these dances, there was a rule in the entertainment business where two African American people could not, African Americans couldn't perform by themselves. So they had to have at least one other person. So that's why the duet just kind of became the norm. Eventually, you know, that whole thing with like having to be by themselves, not being able to be by themselves and having to have a partner, that went away when, you know, we had some more open-minded talent agents, bless them. The guy who is thought to be the kind of father of tap dance is a guy named William Henry Lane, or as he was called, Master Juba, who he was a former slave, and he kind of, after he was released, he kind of got, I'm just kidding, he was not a former slave. I totally got that wrong. Back up. Anyway, he was not a former slave because slavery was gone at this point. He was kind of the first person to put it out on the stage. He actually like worked so much that they're not even really sure how he died. He kind of just worked himself to death because he just loved this kind of dance so much. He was working like every day for like 11 years, and he died when he was like 27. But he really like popularized this kind of dance. He had groups together, and they performed in a lot of nightclubs and pretty much anywhere that they could get, because at this point in time, it's like the 1920s. It's still very segregated. Like the people who were getting the like fancy gigs or whatever are the white people. And then the thing that really kind of transformed tap into what we think of as tap dancing now was film. When films started to have sound in like the early 1930s, obviously there's sound in movies, so we can have dance in movies now. And this is when this genre of like the movie musical got really popular, and oftentimes it was a tap musical. That seemed to be what would happen. What happened was all these Broadway performers like Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, Bill Robinson, Eleanor Powell, all those fun guys, they kind of came into the film section and were like, we want to do this here. And it was really popular. Like I think Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers made like 11 dance movies together in the course of like 10 years or something ridiculous like that. And these dancers kind of transformed it from being just like a really kind of simple, like stomping around doing whatever, to kind of incorporating elements of jazz and ballroom and ballet, and kind of made it more of like a graceful art form. These dance films were really popular during World War II because World War II was awful, and they were just always very happy. Like if you ever watch them, they're very light, you know, like if you've ever seen Singing in the Rain, which has a lot of tap in it. Super happy movie. I think there's like one sad moment or something. Now, this was real fun and everything until TV came along. And TV kind of like killed it for a minute, because what happened was television. With television, the entire nation sees it. It's not like a movie where like some people see it, some people don't, whatever, and these people could still perform and like do their one same dance over and over. So now it's like they do one dance, it's on TV, everyone sees it, and then they come up with a new routine. Whereas before, with like vaudeville shows, you could do the same routine for like 10 years and no one knows the difference. So it kind of just burnt out a lot of these dancers, and it kind of just brought this big struggle into tap dancing. But thankfully, we had the like surging up of Las Vegas and its like super popularity during like the 60s and 70s really saved some of these dancers from having to just kind of like quit dancing. They got to go and have their own shows or whatever. So it kind of died from there, which is really sad, but there was kind of a rebirth in the 1980s because we started to have these really like fun dance musicals. Like 42nd Street is the most like, it's kind of the one that everywhere I was looking at this information was like, this is the movie that brought back tap dancing. I've never actually seen it, but I've heard of it. But it's obviously really popular because I've never seen it and I've heard of it, so that's always a good mark of popularity. But it's not lost its hope. Like tap dancing is not gone forever, because according to Britannica.com, tap dancing is actually the second most widely taught form of dance to kids, like right after ballet. And usually the kids who take ballet take tap. So we're kind of hopefully headed for a bringing back of the tap dance. Just a couple of years ago, there was like that silent movie that won. I don't know why they quotes it was a silent movie, but it was made in 2011, The Artist, and it had a lot of tap in it, which was really cool. So, yeah, today, hopefully you have learned a couple more things about tap. You've learned about the origin story. You've learned about kind of the evolution and history and how maybe it will go in the future. And I have some pictures of some very popular dance numbers that